Hello. Yeah, this is a bit of a change up to what I usually do. I'm actually going to cover this particular video. It's called I Gave Up on the Linux Desktop After 25 Years, and it's from Kent's Tech World. Now, he talks a lot of sense in this video, and during it I'll be pausing it and talking about what he's talking about, the changes I've seen in Linux as well. I've used Linux since Ubuntu 10.4 Lucid Linux. Yeah, off and on. I've been using Linux since then. I've also used Linux Mint. My most favourite distro was, of course, Peppermint. That was my favourite one. I'm now using Arco Linux as my daily driver, but I also use Windows as well, simply because I've got proprietary hardware that I can only get running in Windows, and then having to, like my Go XLR, for instance, I have to then reboot and then come back into Linux after setting up the settings inside of Windows. Yeah. So, without further ado, I did put a comment underneath this, and I'll probably repeat myself again underneath this video. If you want to go ahead, if you're into Linux, if you're running Linux at the moment and you're not subscribed to him, I highly recommend that you do, because he talks an awful lot of sense. He might swear a bit during this video, which he does anyway, but I can understand as for why. So yeah, we'll go from the beginning of this video, even though
of the people that
go from the beginning. All right, hang on.
for the cause, for the Linux evolvement, for the Linux revolution. Hello there, all you amazing people out there. There's a reason for that picture over there. Bing, bing, bing. I've been using Linux on the desktop for over 25 years, give or take, maybe a year. But I rounded up to close to 25 years. I've been advocating for the Linux desktop, even though you may not know it, from my YouTube channel, but in private for as long. I have been talking to people, companies, or people in companies that in the IT departments and stuff like that, to try and get them to use Linux. You know, I was, look at it like this. Go watch it.
Problem is, Linux will always be a hobbyist. You know, it's free and open source. Yes, with a majority of the software that we've got on out there, with the free and open source stuff, some of it is actually better than using proprietary. That's the whole idea. It's a different way of thinking. Why can't it be free anyway? When the free software movement started, having to ask for permission to actually get the basics of actually being able to write how a script is put together and all that took forever. That took forever to get answers from, and you can check that out with Stallman, for instance, Richard Stallman, who went for the movement of the free and open source. When it comes to the Linux desktop, mind, you got to remember that it's free and open source. It's for years since it began. It's always been for hobbyists and for servers. So and yet, even I'm guilty of it as well, of complaining that we can't have this, we can't have that. Hence, like the Go XLR, there have been people out there who have tried to develop programs for the Go XLR for Linux, so that it runs nearly the same as the proprietary software that is in Windows. But it's not there yet. Gaming isn't there yet on Linux either. Gaming will never ever be there. If you want to play the latest games, just use Windows. Or, by all means, if you're up for the challenge, use the Steam Deck. instead of using the Linux desktop. That's the whole idea of Valve going towards that. I don't know. It swings and roundabouts when it comes to free and open source software. I prefer Linux never to be as popular as Windows or Mac. I don't want it up there like that. I never ever looked at Linux and said, well, yeah, that's the problem. That's the problem with market share and all that. Up and down and what have you. Yeah. But at the same time, all we'll get is stupid people getting their hands on Linux code and then just writing loads of malware and what have you, and we'll end up with problems and we'll be up there with the likes of Windows or Mac and suffering the consequences as we go along. That's my view on it anyway. I mean, yeah, in the real world, I think when the computer movement first came on in, it should have been handled a different way. I remember talking to Mark Greaves about this, and he said, yeah, I wish that it was handled in a different way. Instead of proprietary systems getting on in there, he wished, as so does a lot of other people, that Linux got in there first. But it's not going to happen because not everything that everyone's used to is going to work on Linux. And that's part of what this video is about. Now, Kent obviously has been using Linux for like 25 years and he's been promoting it. But at the same time, should Linux be like that? There's a question for you. In my view, no, it shouldn't. It will always be a hobbyist operating system. And luckily that we can do stuff like I'm doing now, watching YouTube videos through it, or streaming Netflix or Disney or whatever, or emails. It's good for that. But for anything proprietary based, it isn't good at. I gave up gaming in Linux simply because I'm fed up of having to keep tinkering around in the terminal. I shouldn't have to. So I stick with Windows for me gaming now. I don't, I just don't see Linux a viable platform to be able to game on, and I don't think it ever will be. Billions and billions of code on out there to get all these Windows games going. I mean, yeah, if it runs on the Steam Deck, then yeah, about 8 times out of 10 it'll run on the Linux desktop as well. But it's all the problem is well, depending on what hardware you're using as well. I mean, everything that's talked about in this video, like proprietary software, a lot of it is written into the kernel, but that's only to get the hardware to run on a Linux desktop. The Go XLR, another instance of that, has its own built-in software. But a lot of the software, like the codecs and all that, a lot of that possibly is free anyway. Free and open source. Don't know. But it just gets bundled up into a proprietary system because every single manufacturer on the planet believes that everyone on the planet is using Windows and proprietary systems only. And yeah, I get the argument for that. Anyway, let's carry on with this, because otherwise I'm going to talk over this video and we're going to run out of time.
DistroTube video about open source, the way he talks on a video, that was me talking to an IT department, a rep salesman for IT stuff, a software vendor, a software representative, a software salesperson. That was me going into my local, we didn't have like Best Buy and stuff like that, but our local computer shops and talking to owners, salesperson and stuff like that. The way Danish DistroTube was talking about Linux, that was how I talked to those people times 100. I wouldn't fucking let go. So I've done my bit for the cause, for the fucking Linux evolvement, for the Linux revolution. I've done my bit. And year after year after year after year after year, what I see is what we see over here. And it can be a little bit hard to see, but it's basically two ladders put together with bungee cord or cord with a guy drilling a hole in the ceiling. My experience, what I have seen going on for Linux on the Linux desktop, and why I'm giving up on the Linux desktop. I'm totally giving up on the Linux desktop, because what I have noticed and seen is that not only does the community shoot itself in the foot over and over and over again by being hostile, anti this, anti that, yelling and screaming at people for not doing exactly what they want, and so on and so on and so on. Imagine a Linux distribution a little bit like this guy standing with a drill in his hand on these ladders here. What 9 out of 10 Linux distributions are focusing on is making sure that this guy over here has the best fucking drill in the world. Your job is to drill holes in ceilings and have a good foundation to stand on, so you can drill an amazing hole. Linux distributions, 9 out of 10 of them, are focusing only on the drill. Everything beneath that is put together with tape, all different fucking sizes and spring off, you know. It's not just 2 ladders put together with fucking...
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Consistency, big problem. Getting things to run in Linux, depending on the hardware you're running it on, depending on your use case as well. What do you want to use Linux for? I use it as my daily driver. I use it as my daily driver for my emails, for doing videos on like I'm doing now, for creating stuff, for rendering video, and doing stuff in GIMP. I prefer GIMP over Photoshop. There's an argument about that in a minute that he brings up. It all depends on the user case and what you want to use Linux for. And Linux will always be a hobbyist operating system. There's no other way of looking at it. And until there's another movement where proprietary manufacturers or proprietary software manufacturers actually say, well, look, hang on, why don't we make it for this and this? The thing is, you see, is that a lot of companies are in the kernel already, like your AMD, your Intel, Microsoft are in there as well. Bits of Mac is in there. You name it, it's in there. And there's other companies as well, IBM and all that have gone on into the kernel too. A lot of it is only hardware. It's not the software. So it doesn't run exactly the same as what it would in a proprietary system. But if you plug in like a pair of headphones or whatever, like Kent says in a minute about sound, he says, yeah, like a pair of headphones, you just get the sound there. You just get the sound there only. But you don't get for like you get in a proprietary system where you get to hear the footsteps in a computer game. So you hear the footsteps from further away. You don't get that because the software wasn't written for Linux. And so it will never get supported. And that's what pisses people off. What else do you want from a free and open source operating system? What else do you want? It's free. Free for you to download, free for you to install and use for the rest of your life. You can either use Arch, Gentoo, whatever you're using. It's yours at the end of the day to do whatever you want with. It's a hobbyist operating system, and it will always be a hobbyist operating system. And I'm going to bring that up a lot in this video.
Fucking tape and cords. It's hundreds of fucking ladders put together with cords and tape. It's a mess. It's a yarn mess, you know, intertwined cords and cables and all that fucking shit. That's Linux underneath from a desktop perspective. But we are focusing on one fucking thing, and that's getting people the most amazing drill. I meant the fun phase of Linux. You see, 9 out of 10 distributions are putting all their effort into theming the distribution, making a nice fucking website, you know, Pantheonist, you know, that kind of philosophy. It's the Pantheon philosophy, you know, the elementary OS philosophy. Let's give the end user a nice fucking drill that have a nice fucking feature set that looks amazing, works amazing, economically is amazing in your hand, you know, you don't get fucking tendonitis by using it and all that shit. What about the worker? What about the clothes the worker's on? What about the foundation that he's standing on to drill that hole in the ceiling? Let's forget about that. And let me tell you something that will probably make you happy, but probably also make you a little bit like sad. It actually makes me sad is that Linux already have a nice fucking drill, you know, drilling machine. Like, we have great fucking drilling machines. We already have amazing, like top of the line, amazing, future looking, feature rich, I can't speak, feature rich environments like Mate, GNOME, XFCE, KDE, Cinnamon. Now we have Pantheon and now Cosmic Desktop and all these. Like, let's just talk about the top 3, XFCE, GNOME, and KDE. Those alone would satisfy 99.9% of potential new users to Linux. They are working a little bit on the underlying stuff of desktop, you know, like WLAN and Xorg and stuff like that. I do like that to some extent, but the whole WLAN thing is making me a little bit anxious because we tried it 10 years ago and we did it for like a couple of years and then everyone just dropped the ball because they either couldn't get it to work as they want or it didn't get the traction as they expected it to do. And I'm feeling we kind of going into the same thing again. Oh, Xorg, or not Xorg, WLAN is getting a little bit of a boost. 2-3 years down the line, everyone's going on to the next thing. You know, reinventing the wheel. I hate that fucking shit. So we already have a great user experience. What we don't have, and has been lacking for as long as I've been using Linux on the desktop, is every fucking thing else. We still have issues with getting software that people ask for on Linux. For one reason or another. We're still having issues with buying peripherals, and we can only use the bare functions of them. You have to remember this. Most people buy peripherals for what they're doing. They buy a headset to hear sounds, but they also buy a headset because of the extra features that the software brings to them. LED control, voice change, just like this is built-in voice changer, Discord integration, game integration, and all of that shit, which this headset also have. That's why they buy them, to either get a competitive advantage in gaming, like this headset in software can highlight footsteps in games. And that's one of the reasons why people buy this fucking shit. And the Linux mentality has always been, oh, a headset? You buy it because you want to listen to fucking sounds.
Yeah, but thing is what do you expect from a free and open source software or a free operating system? It's a free operating system. Linux will never have the backing, the amount of money to be able to have that sort of software written for it. Surely it will never ever have that backing. And again, it comes back to the use case of the person wanting to use Linux. What do you want it for? You want it as a replacement for Windows? Easy. That's easily done. Like Kent says, with all like KDE, GNOME, XFCE. You've got all of them. What else do you want, for goodness sake? We have, he brings it up later on, we have GIMP in place of for Photoshop and what have you. But another argument he brings up is, what have you done? All these people that gripe about Linux not being up there with Windows, and I've been guilty of that in the past as well. What have we done as a community to say, well, hang on, we haven't gone off to these companies to say, look, any chance you could write something for Linux so that I can run your hardware on there properly? Is it harder to write for Linux? I don't think so. It's probably easier, actually. They just won't do it because they don't. Again, it comes down to market share, doesn't it? That's why they won't produce stuff for Linux. You know, you won't get the footsteps that you get running with these headphones and whatever. You'll just get the basics, which is the hardware, software, or the hardware compatibility, if you like, that's in the kernel. That's all you'll get. Anyway.
So let's just get the sound part working and forget about the rest. People buy a mouse to point and click, but they also buy a mouse because of all of the extra features that it brings with it. LEDs, like I said again, software integration with other products and stuff like that. And that's the latter part of this picture over here. But the Linux people, they seem to only think about, well, you want a photo editing software called Photoshop. Let's make GIMP. Oh, you want a full-blown professional video editing software where you have spent thousands of dollars on plugins to and spent decades learning and have work experience with. Let's make OpenShot and KDE Live. That's not going to work, boo-boo. Okay? You're not going to get massive companies, professionals, hobbyists to throw away Premiere Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and all that shit for KDE Live. I'm sorry, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get people to switch to gaming under Linux because, well, you can technically point and click with your mouse. But all of the extra features, yeah, fuck those. Unless you have, like, Logitech and only select Logitech mices, and a few other brands that we have kind of working LED control on.
Now I've got an artist pad here, and it's taken since Linux began, it's taken all these years in order for a proprietary pad to actually work in Linux. And it actually works in GIMP, and it works very well. Out of the box, it recognizes it straight away. But again, that's written into the kernel, so you don't get all the functionality of it, but you get enough. You get enough for what you need. Is that wrong of Linux to be like that? Well, no. At least there's something in the kernel to say, well, yeah, that hardware will work with this, but you won't. If there was something in the small print that would say, if you want to run these things in Linux, these proprietary bits of hardware in Linux, there should be small print to say, well, it's not going to work as well as what it would with proprietary software to run these pieces of hardware. Because simply there isn't enough room in the kernel to add all of that shit. That's why. So the only other route is to actually write software for these particular bits of hardware. But how do you go around that? By going, I guess, to the actual manufacturer, but then by now, why hasn't anybody done that? But Kent has. He's gone to companies and that to get them to run Linux on their business computers and whatever. He's also asked them to do. I don't know. I don't know if he's asked them for them to do proprietary. Get proprietary hardware actually going in Linux as well by writing the software. I don't know about that, but. What do you do, eh? What? So when you move on over from Windows to Linux, what is it that you actually miss from being a Windows user? No? There's... what exactly do you want a computer for? Why do you want a desktop computer? Are you a creator? What? because we have all the tools, the open source tools in Linux to be able to do all of that. It's just that, yeah, it isn't up there with the latest Adobe stuff. And it never will be. That's proprietary. That's paid for shit. It's free and open source here in Linux. Everything's free for you. That was why Richard Stallman went on the march for free and open software all those years ago. You know? And possibly strangling a load of people in order to get the code off of them in the first place so that we can have all these different operating systems that we've got today. But hey-ho.
Oh, you want to change your headset and the software associated with your headset? Yeah, plug into a virtual machine running Windows, or have a laptop or second computer running Windows, and every time you have to change something on your peripherals, or it don't have to be headset, but any peripherals that don't have Windows-only software, plug it off your fucking Linux machine and plug it into your Windows machine. Change the things you want, plug it out again and plug it in. How fucking stupid does that sound? The foundation is not there. They don't work on it. Because when it comes to the foundation, this is the mentality of the Linux community and a lot of Linux developers. Oh, Photoshop is not supporting Linux. I'm just using Photoshop as an example because most of you know Photoshop. Photoshop is just a placeholder for your favorite thing that you want to get to work under Linux. So the Linux community is saying, oh, well, they are not supporting Linux out of the box. Yeah, why should they? Oh, because we want it. Okay, what have you done? What have the Linux community done to make, in this case, Photoshop to work under Linux?
Exactly. You know, you use the free and open source software. We all do, but we haven't. We gripe, but we don't do anything about it. We don't ask or go out of our way to say, hang on, why don't we go to the companies and say, look, here's a proposal for you. Why don't you write some free code for Linux? But then again, you see, something like Photoshop, you'll still have to pay for. And people don't want that, do they? That's the whole idea of them coming on over to free and open source. They don't want to pay for anything.
Or get Photoshop to support Linux. What have we done as a collective community to get that to work, other than bitching, moaning, yelling, and screaming at them? We demand you to support us. You should be open source so we can fork your business model. You should this and that. That's the only thing we've done. We have not done anything else. Have we done as a collective? Have we gone over to Photoshop and said, we will help you port Photoshop and Adobe products to Linux by giving you development help? We don't like your proprietary, but yeah, we will still help you. How many have gone to Adobe and said, we really want you to be part of this amazing experience?
Yeah. Can't think of any at the top of my head at all. Can't think of any at all that has. Unless, of course, Canonical with Microsoft. People moan about that Ubuntu, people at Ubuntu are in with Microsoft. Microsoft bought a seat on the Linux Linux Foundation for a few billion, I think. But where has that money gone? What does it go on? Who knows? How much does it cost actually to keep Linux running as a whole? Just because it's free to us to use, what are the developers actually paying out for? Their licenses? I don't know. Surely there's a clause there somewhere, isn't there? No matter if anything's free. I don't believe that everything is free. I mean, You know, I come from a Windows background, but I never used Photoshop on Windows until recently. About 2 years ago when I started using it, and I shot myself in the foot because I ended up leaving that, but ended up paying double to come off of Adobe products, to get my name off of their mailing list, because I didn't do the full year. Could you imagine that on Linux? You imagine the uproar of that? Yeah. Just doesn't work. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. This is why there has been written open source stuff to take the place of. Okay, we got GIMP. Yeah, brilliant. I love GIMP. I absolutely love GIMP. In fact, that is easier to me than using Photoshop. And yet you can still use Photoshop code. If you've got Photoshop and you've saved it as one of those file things, you can still open it up in GIMP. So it supports Photoshop stuff.
Can we do to help you be part of it? And here's another thing. The few fucking distributions or software houses that do it, they get yelled and screamed at by the community because now they are entrangling into a fucking, sleeping with the devil. They are part of the problem. They are talking with proprietary companies and bad companies. If you want something on Linux, we have to cooperate with other philosophies, other viewpoints on the world. Linux and open source is not the only viewpoint on the world and software development. And proprietary software is not bad. It's the people using that code. Okay? So a good example here is that I have some scripts out there. They are open source, or they actually think they are MIT licensed or BSD licensed. If proprietary software made a software bad, if I then went and used the proprietary code, is that software now bad? Is that software now doing bad things to your system? Is that software, those scripts now doing telemetry, data collection, and all that shit? No, they are working just the same as they did when they were BSD licensed. We focus too much on the license and the philosophy instead of the people that are doing it. Proprietary software can be just as fucking good as open source and be just as consumer friendly as open source if the people developing that software has that mindset. And another thing is that we have to be okay with pay for shit, because here's what this is again, I've talked with Linux users and seen the Linux community for over 25 years. If Photoshop came or any other thing came to Linux and they had to fucking throw money at it to get it, they will bitch and moan again.
Yeah, that's the problem. Swings and roundabouts, isn't it, eh? Catch-22 every fucking time with it all. Yeah, like you just said, if they did bring Photoshop on over to Linux, and if you ended up having to pay for it, then you're bitch and gripe again because it isn't free and open source. So what do you want, for God's sake? It all boils down to what you want a computer for in the first place. What do you want to use Linux for in the first place? Whether you're a creator, a gamer, whatever. Gaming on Linux will never be... I mean, yeah, it's good. If you've got the patience to run terminal commands and actually try and get these games to run. Porting to Linux, porting games to Linux has gone downhill. There's hardly any AAA games that is coming out on Linux now, since Proton's taken on over. What do you want? What do you want out of your system? I use Arco Linux. I'm using Arch. I use Arch. Yeah, wow. So what? Use whatever. It's all the same. Apart from Arch, it's just the cutting edge stuff. That's all it is. And so I'm getting updates every single day. I'm up to the latest software and that. from I'm on 6.12 now, 6.1.12 or something, kernel. Yeah, so what? What's it matter? It still all runs the same. The programs are still all the same, apart from they're the most up to date. What's it matter what you run? No matter what, it's down to the community, isn't it? It's down to the community to be able to say, if you want these proprietary system hardware to run properly in Linux, then you either write the software for it yourself, or you find someone who can, or you go straight to the manufacturer of that and say, look, any chance you could write a little bit of code for Linux, please? I can't see Photoshop ever coming to Linux. Never, ever will that come to Linux. That's just, no way. It's for proprietary systems only. And that's the way it is. And it will never, ever come to Linux. Linux will always be a hobbyist operating system. And that is that. It's a dim, do-it-myself operating system. With Windows, you've got everything there for you. It automatically updates unless you switch the automatic updates off. With Linux, it's yours to own. There's no spying in Linux or anything like that. You're safe there. By all means, switch a firewall on, especially these days. But there's no, like I say, there's no spying, there's no telemetry as such. The only operating system that might is an Ubuntu-based operating system, but that's only because they want to find out how many people are actually using their operating system when the new one gets released or whatever. Yeah. Oh, God. I love Linux. I love it. For my use case, which is making videos, making content, as I am now, it's fine. Would I record me Go XLR in Windows? No, and I never have done. I don't do videos in Windows. I only make videos through Linux. I'll never ever record anything going through Windows. Windows is a fantastic platform if it weren't for the telemetry, if it wasn't for all that other crap and what they push on you, and every time you get an update, all your settings have gone back to default again, because they keep on pushing it that you must use it the Microsoft way. Why should I? That's the only downfall with Windows, is because of Microsoft button their oar in all the time. And they want to be the most they've always wanted to be the most powerful company in the whole of the world, Microsoft have. They always have been. They always wanted telemetry. They always wanted to spy on people, because they're full of paranoia of their operating system. Hence why the big change to Windows 10 or even Windows 8. Oh, God, what a nightmare that was. I loved Windows Vista. In fact, I still got Vista somewhere on an old laptop. And XP. Didn't have any telemetry in XP, not like what you get now. It was free for you to use in any way you wanted, see fit. Windows XP was actually the open source world of Microsoft, if you like, because you could basically do whatever you wanted with it. Whereas now it's locked down, isn't it? Windows 10, Windows 11 is all locked down, and you've got to run it the way that Microsoft want you to run it. big mistake from Microsoft, I think. But they've always wanted to control that of what people do on their operating system. And you only rent it anyway. You only rent Microsoft. You don't actually own it. Even if you bought a disc or downloaded it from the web and bought the bloody key thing that you got a activation key, it's not yours at all. And that's the difference between proprietary and free and open source. And you ain't ever going to see Photoshop in Linux. I'm sorry. You'll have to stay with Windows or Mac if you want to use that proprietary stuff. To me, it's too much. And again, it's spying on you, isn't it? Adobe, they spy on you anyway.
Because they don't want to pay for anything. And that's why we're getting this crazy foundation. That is the main problem why Linux is not on the desktop. It's not the desktop environment. It's the whole mentality of the Linux community and the open source community towards everything that's not the Linux community, not the open source community. And the childish fucking entitlement up with that you should be this, you should do that, you should just support us, you should not just give us that, instead of fucking helping them, supporting us. And the companies and organizations that do that are being crucified for doing it. Look at what Ubuntu, look at the OpenSUSE or SUSE back in the day when they were getting NetWare to work and Active Directory. SUSE was one of the first companies to work with Microsoft to get Microsoft technologies to work under Linux. Why? Because a big fucking part of their user group wanted it. And already back then, like in the early 2000s, people were yelling and screaming at SUSE for doing that. They are now yelling and screaming at Canonical for working with proprietary software companies and Microsoft and all that. Why the fuck do you think they're doing it? Because there is a massive consumer demand for it from their user base. Philosophies and ideas and stuff like that is really great, but they are not going to get shit done. You have to work in the world that we are living in. And I'm sorry to say it, proprietary software is not bad, Windows is not bad, Mac OS is not bad. It's the people doing bad things with it. The human developers, the corporations telling the human developers to make the software do the things that we don't like. We should not be yelling at Windows for having telemetry, which is the most fucking unlogical and idiotical fucking debate I've seen in all my life. With the Linux community being, anti-Windows this and anti-that. No. Take Windows out of the equation. It's anti-Microsoft. It's Microsoft, and specifically Microsoft management.
Yeah, indeed. It's the management of Microsoft with all the telemetry and all that. Nothing to do with the Windows operating system itself. It's just the way that it's been written. And like you said, it's all the developers and all the other crap people that tell Microsoft or Microsoft telling everyone on how they should run, telling us all how we should run their operating system, the Microsoft way, with all those billions of companies that have put on into Microsoft with their proprietary software. Yeah. Becoming locked down now, isn't it? It's Big Brother spying on us all the time. No matter where you go in life.
I'm sorry, but bitching and moaning about what Microsoft is doing and Windows is doing and then promoting fucking Android and Chrome OS from a company that are probably 100 times worse than Windows and Microsoft. So not only are we not working with the current situation the world is in to get stuff that people want under Linux and helping companies to be part of the Linux community. We are actively actually trying to not do that. The foundation problem with Linux is that we can't come up with a good foundation to build Linux upon because everyone wants to do their own fucking thing because they think they're the smartest cook in the kitchen. We are actively competing and eating each other alive from inside that foundation that we should be building. So instead of building an amazing foundation with amazing streamline pipelines for getting hardware vendors to support Linux, software vendors to support Linux, getting peripherals to work under Linux. We are now working against each other. This problem has not been solved in all of the years I've been using Linux on the desktop. It's only gotten worse. Once in a
Yeah, and that's the problem. And it'll probably just get worse and worse and worse and worse. But like I said before, the argument I'm saying is, what do you want out of your operating system? You want it to run just like Windows, and you want it to run just like a proprietary system. That was the whole idea of moving away from proprietary system anyway, was to get away from that. Not so much the telemetry and that Microsoft have put on into their latest operating systems. I'm talking about building it yourself, because that is the philosophy of Linux, is build your operating system yourself. Make it your own. Run the software that you want to run, but without the so much proprietary side of it. Yes, you can run proprietary hardware, but you won't get the software to run with it. It just doesn't work like that. What do you want, for God's sake? That's what you got to ask yourself. What do you want out of Linux? What do you use it for? If you're just using it for emails and shopping online and streaming YouTube and streaming Netflix, Disney and all that, then yeah, fine. Do so. That's what I use it for. That, and also creating my own videos and rendering my own videos and stuff. That's what I use it for when I've got time to do a video.
In a while, we go a little step forward and then we go 5 steps backward. The year of the Linux desktop and stuff like that. The reason why that has not happened is like 8 out of 10 times our own fucking fault. Been a long one. I'm out of here. I've given up on the Linux desktop. See you all later. Bye-bye.
And there you go, everybody. There's something for you to think about. Please subscribe to his channel. It's really, really good. He talks an awful lot of sense, and it's just getting a different perspective from him, and also from other channels that I've subscribed to as well, like DistroTube, for instance. It's different perspectives on how they look at the Linux desktop, how they look at tech, and that sort of thing. Really, really good. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. That is it from me. Bye for now.